Rochester community. Welcome to the Policy Committee of the Whole. Apologies for starting late. We had a closed session for suspension appeals prior to this, and it went over. Especially thank you for our speakers who are on Zoom waiting to be heard for your patience. To start the meeting, I'd like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The agenda is approved. The first thing on the agenda is speakers. We have 5 speakers. Charisma, are you going to usher them all in? These are all speaking on the wellness policy, which is on our policy committee agenda tonight. Most of the work was done by members of the community and the administration together. So we're anxiously looking forward to hearing from the community on this.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. So our first speaker up is Aria. I'm sorry, I'm sorry I'm saying your name incorrectly. Is a parent speaking on the wellness policy.
Perhaps she can tell us how
Aria, are you there?
I'm here, yes.
All right. Aria, you have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. Hello, scholars, parents, and caregivers. President Elliott, Vice President LeBron, Commissioners, and Superintendent Myers-Small. Thank you for the opportunity to address you about our district's wellness policy. My name is Aria Camioni Lind, and I am the proud parent of 3 RCSD scholars. I sit on the Wellness Task Force as a parent representative, and I participated in the Healthy Kids Work Group to make recommendations to you about the RCSD wellness policy. My children and all of our children deserve a wellness policy that authentically supports their health and wellness, is implemented with fidelity by all administrators, faculty, and staff, and is in compliance with federal legislation. To that end, I am asking you for these 5 things. Listen to students and parents. COVID-19 has had a negative impact on students' health, and students have shared in the recent Youth Behavioral Risk Assessment survey alarming data over the state of their current health and well-being. Enforce the rules. Prioritize student wellness and health in schools. The district is currently not in compliance with federal regulations. The last update to the wellness policy was in 2017. Currently, the RCSD is not in compliance with federal requirements and at risk of losing pieces of funding through their child nutrition programs. Students' health and well-being is important now more than ever. The wellness policy helps support and govern the wellness of our kids. We want our children to be healthy, and COVID-19 has impacted students' health and well-being. We're currently in a mental health crisis. Advancing a new wellness policy will support current district priorities. Prioritizing student health and wellness through district policy can ensure overall student success and achievement. Kids that are healthy do better in school, have stronger social emotional skills, and better mental health. And finally, a policy is only as good as its implementation. We must work together to ensure students' health is prioritized. This policy needs to be adopted with strong language and strong accountability measures. There needs to be standards in place to make sure that our kids are healthy. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much for addressing the board this evening. Our next speaker up is Toyin Anderson. Toyin, are you there? All right, we will move on and come back. Our next speaker up is Alyssa Evans. Are you there?
Greetings. I am here. My Zoom is pretty wonky, so I have to keep my video off.
No problem.
Apologies in advance.
You,
Thank you.
you have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you so much. Greetings, esteemed board members, Rochester City School District staff, partners, parents, families, and community. My name is Alicia Evans, and I'm a graduate of the Rochester City School District and a parent of 2 successful graduates of the Rochester City School District. And I have my baby, who is a current student in the RCSD. I'm also the Healthy Schools Project Coordinator at Common Ground Health on the Healthy Kids Initiative, where I partner with the RCSD and individual schools to advance wellness opportunities for all of our students. I also convene the Wellness Work Group and participate on the Wellness Task Force. The time to move is now. The pandemic has compounded toxic stress for our children and community. Consistent toxic stress in childhood caused by poverty, adverse childhood experiences, racism can significantly alter overall brain structure and function for children and negatively impacts their overall health and well-being in the future. The need to invest and prioritize the health and wellness of our students has never been greater. The district wellness policy sets the roadmap for overall goals, requirements, and should provide accountability for the district to advance healthy and safe environment for all students. A local wellness policy is required by federal legislation. The policy is required to create a policy outline and their goals and strategies to advance student health and wellness in the school district. The USDA has specific requirements local school district must meet in regards to their wellness policy. The last update to the Rochester City School District's wellness policy was in 2017. Currently, the Rochester City School District is not in compliance with federal requirements and may or is at risk for losing pieces of funding in the future through their child nutrition programs. All school districts across the country are audited to ensure that their school meals programs are following federal regulations. Those districts not in compliance receive immediate corrective action, and in some cases, funding is either delayed or removed. The federal government, through the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, requires several components to be included in every district's local wellness policy. These include goals for nutrition promotion and education, goals for physical activity, goals for other activities that promote school wellness, nutrition guidelines for all foods sold on school property, policies for food and beverages made available to all students, policies for food and beverage marketing, plan for family, student, and community participation in the implementation of the policy, inform public about the wellness policy annually, assign someone in the district to be responsible for compliance. Every 3 years, measure compliance with policy and share with the public. Every 3 years, review progress to the goals. So we're just asking that, the recommendations that the wellness work group worked so hard on since last June and that were presented to the wellness task force as well and were approved. We're looking forward to those being approved and really being considered. I'm sorry, my daughter just came home, so I got thrown off a little bit. Being a mom, but thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate this opportunity to stress the importance of the wellness recommendations being approved.
Alicia, can you hold on the line just a little longer?
Yes.
I appreciate your clarity in stating that you're looking forward to this version being approved by the board. I just want to clarify, when you say that we're out of compliance, you mean because it's been more than 3 years since it was last presented to the Board of Education for update?
Well, not necessarily that part, because there is some lenience when it comes to, because of the COVID pandemic. So I think the clock started back again in 2021, and there's a year where we have time that we have to work together. And so that's one of the spaces where Healthy Kids the work group as well as the Wellness Task Force has been able to support the entire Rochester City School District in meeting that timeline.
Thank you very much for your clarity. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
And I want to thank Aria too, because the question first came to my mind when she was speaking, but she was gone before I could ask the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alicia, for addressing the board. Did Toyin Anderson join on? Okay.
Yes, I did.
Hi, Toyin. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. You have 3 minutes to address the board whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you so much. Right, I'm also, like we said, hello, commissioners. I'm also joining, to talk about the wellness policy. And I was definitely privileged to be a part of doing these revisions and with children of our district, which is so important because this policy is designed to make sure they are healthy, right? And part of my request, as being a part of that process, I learned so much. But I'm really, really hoping that we could just listen more to our students. It's something that's so important, and parents, because they might be young and definitely always don't know their direction, but they know what they want. They know what's important to them. They know what's good for them too. So we have to also incorporate their voices in whatever things that we put in place for them. The kids have been screaming that they need some mental health, you know, and behavioral health stuff going on. We see it in many ways because it takes shape and form, whether they do it intentionally or unintentionally in their behaviors and stuff, and they're screaming that we need to act now. We keep dancing around making sure their wellness is okay. And as we could see, I know it's post-pandemic, and that made everything worse because we already had stuff going on in our district and in the entire world. So don't get me wrong, in the country, but we got to worry about Rochester kids. And please, I'm asking the board, to vote to help to make sure we implement this policies for our kids. We got to prioritize their wellness and health in school, because if somebody's well-being is not okay, then most likely no other aspect of their lives are gonna be okay. So I'm asking, making sure that our kids, are put and prioritized and put first and given things that they're asking for and screaming for. Please, the wellness policy, helps to support and govern the wellness of our kids. We want our children to be healthy. That's what we're asking for. Please help us with this mental health crisis by implementing these. A policy is only as good as its implementation. So even having the wellness policy and it sits on a shelf is not doing any good for us or our children. I know one thing that always resonated with me as we were going through this is the recess process, where we know recess is a policy that is not supposed to be a punishment for our babies, but yet our kids could still come home and tell us. And kids that were able to be a part of this process, who were educated and can make educated decisions for themselves, and know this is a policy and it's not supposed to be a punishment or used that way, but yet it still happened in their schools, happened to their classrooms. And not only because of that, it was upsetting, because even the kids that didn't do anything wrong, that teachers seemed like they were punishing and taking away recess, the other kids had to suffer also. And we know, and that really, really hurt my heart, because I'm like, you can only help a classroom because if they have wiggles, how about you allow them to run? You know what I'm saying? They need
Toyin,
to
your
stop
time is
taking
up.
away recess.
Sorry.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for addressing the board this evening. Our next speaker is Dorian Young. Is Dorian on? All right. We'll move on to the next speaker, who is Sharon Peck. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Sharon. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Sharon is a community member also addressing on the wellness policy. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I'm going to pick right up where Toyin left off, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and greet all of our stakeholders. I am Dr. Sharon Peck. I am speaking to you tonight as a parent of 2 children at the World of Inquiry School, as a teacher educator at SUNY Geneseo, and as a member of the Wellness Task Force of the Healthy Kids Coalition. I'm here to thank you for taking time to review and update the district wellness policy. The policy in place now from 2017 has strong points, but the revised policy places child nutrition, wellness, and safety at the forefront. I am particularly concerned about student wellness and access to play. We know that the district has not implemented the New York State standards for pre-K3, which call for play-based education. And we know that despite the 2017 wellness policy stating that teachers will not withhold recess from students due to behavior, it happens every single day to 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, all the way on up. 3-year-olds sitting on the wall, watching their peers play. This policy is not being enforced in any of our elementary schools. This means that despite the need to move, stretch, explore, and play, which is central to learning for every child, many of our scholars are regularly deprived of these opportunities to move and play. This practice must stop. And do you know who it impacts the most? It impacts our Black and brown children, who are often perceived as acting up when they are just being age appropriate. And it impacts our boys, who are apt to be more fidgety and need movement the most. In this difficult time when we are all attempting to recover from the pandemic, students need play more than ever. Play heals. Play engages. It builds relationships. It builds social skills. It supports physical, cognitive, social, and emotional development. Everything that our speakers have been talking about. Minutes of recess are mandated per day. They need support. Our students need relationships with their teachers and their peers. All of these opportunities are absent without play. And with a focus on punitive control rather than healing acceptance of each child. A stipulation of the revised wellness policy is that the policy be enforced. This is the time for follow-through. This is the time to stand up for all of our children, the quiet and the active. Please vote to support the revised wellness policy. Please support our whole school community. Thank you.
Thank you for addressing the board. I'm going to go back to Dorian Young. Okay. So at this time, Commissioner Powell, that's the end of our speakers, and there were no comments submitted.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the members of the wellness group who came to the Zoom call to express their support for that policy, and we will get to it very shortly. The next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes from May 3rd. I'll at this time entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I have a motion. And a second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Sounds like it passed unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, 3B, is review of Inisible policy recommendations. At this time, there are no updates. Item number 4, new business. The subcommittee did work on Students Part 3, which is the 5,000 series, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Charisma to walk us through. Is there a presentation, Charisma? Yeah.
Yes.
There's a PDF. You can follow along from Board Docs if you like.
Yes.
And the viewing audience can see it on the screen.
So with the Students Part 3, this includes policies 5312.1a through 5600. And so as a reminder, the policy roadmap, this policy block was reviewed at subcommittee, which did include various individuals from the district administration. And then once it was completed a subcommittee, it went on to the district administration for it to be reviewed in the executive cabinet, as well as some other community stakeholders. And at this time, the policies are before you all. Contributors included Commissioner Powell, the deputies, Adrian, Chief of Operations, the school chiefs, the Executive Director of Equity and Inclusion, the RCSD Wellness Task Force, our parent representative, Reverend Spar, and then Healthy Kids. The subcommittee meets bi-weekly, and we do track changes that is sent over to the executive cabinet, as well as relevant advisory committees. And it's reviewed and again brought back to the subcommittee if further recommendations are required. And so at this time, the drug-free schools policy, which is 5312.1A, the significant changes here was that remove the paragraph about drug-free schools and communities advisory committee. NESBA recommended that this policy be removed as it offers little meaningful policy guidance. And so basically what is being proposed is to keep this policy. The wellness policy, NESBA did not have any changes. However, there are a lot of significant changes that is incorporated throughout the policy based on the recommendations from the RCSD Wellness Task Force and Healthy Kids. Student Health Services Policy, Policy 5420, there are no significant changes, and this policy has been updated from NESBA. The Concussion Policy, 5430, there are no significant changes, and NESBA has no changes either. Suspected Child Abuse and Neglect, Policy 5460, no significant changes as well. This policy has been updated, and I also want to note that you'll see in the changes in the document when we get to that point that the number to the child abuse line is posted more on the district than it was previously based on one of the administration's recommendations to make it more public. Student records privacy policy 5500, the language about volunteer access to student records is the change, and NESBA has updated this policy as well. And then the last one, law enforcement and immigration protections for students, policy 5600, no significant changes. This policy should be reviewed by the school attorney to ensure it reflects current laws. This is not something NESBA maintains a sample on, and of course, Adrian did weigh in on this policy. So next steps is that if all policies are forwarded out of the subcommittee tonight, I should say 6-7, not 614, but what will happen is that the policies will follow the policy 2410, the policy management, and based on that process, the goal would be for the policies to be amended come August. However, the wellness policy will follow a different roadmap. The goal would be, if it is to go through each reading, after today, it would then appear on ESAs. I'm sorry, not ESAs, the special meeting next week, Tuesday. And then it would then appear on June 21st during the Finance Committee meeting. And then finally, it would then go to the June's business meeting to be amended.
So to the point that Charisma just closed with, the reason that the wellness policy is on an accelerated schedule is that there's a desire to have it in place before school starts. And give everyone a chance to make the recommended changes before that. There's no other reason to rush it than to give the administration as much time as possible to enact it. And my only concern was that members of the community would, having only just come to understand that we have these readings so that they can have input into it, we're doing our best to advertise this accelerated timeline far and wide to make sure that those who would want to speak to this aren't cheated out of the chance to do so. Okay? So if, in fact, we expedite it out of this committee, then that's the timeline it would follow, okay? So with that overview in mind, and understanding that all of the language of these policies is in the zip file attached to board docs, and understanding that we will have further opportunity to discuss the changes in the first and second readings at the very least, may I entertain a motion to advance the drug-free schools policy 3212.1A?
So moved.
I have a motion. Second. Seconded by Vice President LeBron. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carries?
Online voting is now open.
Okay. From our viewing audience, the box for the online voting appears at different times. It doesn't show up in front of all of us all at the same time, so we often need to pause to give everyone a chance to respond. Do we have all our answers in,
Right.
Kristen?
Yep, motion passes.
Thank you. The next policy is policy 5405. This is the wellness policy. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Discussion. I think the only item I personally wanted to address is the recess aspect. This isn't new. This existed in the previous version of the wellness policy. You know, once upon a time we had a policy called policy dissemination, and it required a physical copy go to all the schools, and that the principals acknowledge receipt of that policy. And the mission was to make sure that the principals couldn't say, I didn't know, right? They had to see the policy, they had to sign that they received it, and whether they read it was kind of on them. That when we went electronic, that process disappeared, but I wonder if we can create an electronic version of it, because all too often when we hear stories that entire schools don't abide by the recess policy, you know, my personal view is that that's a leadership problem, and that we need to hold our principals accountable and make sure that they in turn hold their teachers accountable. So I just wanted to respond to the feedback we got from members of the Healthy Kids and Wellness Group. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner Adams.
So this issue of us using recess as the lack of giving a student recess as a form of discipline, man, it's been going on far too long. Way before, I mean, when I first started advocating for my kids in school, I would see it happening. It is happening in a whole lot of schools. I can't say every school because I haven't been to every school, but the schools that I was going to, it's been an ongoing issue, and it hasn't been on the down low. People have been talking about this at least for 10 years, and we haven't made an adjustment, man. And I just had to highlight that this is not something new. This is something that's been going on.
I appreciate that. Any other comments? None? In that case, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And we're waiting on the electronic voting.
Online voting is now open. Just waiting on one more commissioner.
Who?
She did it. We're all set. It passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, unanimous for the community to know. Okay, the next policy is number 5420, Student Health Services. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Actually, I heard Commissioner
Second.
Patterson and a second from Commissioner Malloy. All right, discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of advancing it to the full board? Aye.
Aye.
Online voting is now open. All right, passes 6-0.
Thank you so much, Charisma. The next policy is policy 5430, the concussion policy. This is among one of our newest policies, but it is up for revision and renewal. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'm sorry, who seconded? Vice President LeBron, second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're just waiting for the online voting to show up.
Just waiting for one more, Commissioner.
Dr. Jallo, I see that you are on the Zoom call and have been for some time, so if you have anything to add, please just jump right in, okay?
Thank you, I will. Thank you.
We're all set. The motion passes 6-0.
Thank you so much. The next policy is 5460, suspected child abuse and neglect. I have a motion from
Second.
Vice President, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Discussion. Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, Commissioner Powell, so we're motioning them to pull them out, but can we talk about what the track changes are in here too?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to highlight, there's a highlight in here and someone commented, it doesn't tell me who, it just says TCC3. It says, the question is training happening? And it says the school district shall maintain an ongoing training program which will address the identification and reporting of child abuse and maltreatment. Attendance at sessions of this training program shall be required of all district employees who come in contact with students, and attendance records shall be kept and notations will be made in personnel files as to the date of attendance. And I do not think that that's happening, but furthermore, I've brought this up before, we are one of the largest callers of Child Protective Services in Monroe County. And this has come up for me in my advisory council that I serve on. And the fact that we do call and often call about things that are not technically a child protective case, if you will. And that, unfortunately, what that does is then bog down the county system and the CPS workers because they are legally obligated to respond to every one of them. So I don't think the training is happening, and I don't know if there's anybody that can, from the administration side, talk about whether that's happening. I know I've brought this up with the administration, and I've also talked with the commissioner from the Department of Human Services to also have the Department of Child Protective Services come out and do a training for the board, but also live stream it so that everybody, employees who watch the board meetings, students, parents, and community members can have a better understanding of what is a required call, what's not a required call. But internally, we should also have a process for individuals, if they're not quite sure who to call, someone that they can go up to get that clarification. And I don't think that system's in place, but that's the comment I want to make on that.
Okay, I acknowledge you are a professional subject matter expert in this, certainly compared to the rest of us on the board, so I'm going to ask the superintendent to respond.
So thank you, Commissioner Powell and Vice President LeBron. When I saw this policy come up, I made notation that we need to start making sure that everyone from cabinet to the principals, and particularly the mental health providers, so the counselors, the social workers, and the psychologists, that we get on a rotation schedule, and entities like Bavona can provide the training, and we'll make sure that that happens for the 22-23 school year. Absolutely.
Yes, Commissioner Patterson.
I could be wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all teachers, if we're talking teachers, we have to sit for this training online and be certified. I know even when I came on as a commissioner, I had to take this, sit for this training, which I already had as a teacher. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all teachers have to sit for training in this area already.
When they're initially certified, they do.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other questions on this policy? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the online voting is up. I see Reverend Spar is on Zoom. I didn't see her name before, but I want to acknowledge her presence at tonight's meeting on Zoom and say welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner.
The motion passes 6-0.
Okay. The next policy in this block is Student Records Privacy Policy 5500. I have a motion from Vice President
Second.
LeBron, second by Commissioner Malloy. Discussion. Seeing and hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Online voting is now open. Okay, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much, Charisma. The last one in this block is the Law Enforcement and Immigration Protection for Students Policy 5600. I have a motion from Vice President LeBron. Second by Commissioner Malloy. Discussion. Yes, Commissioner Patterson?
No.
Oh, you're waiting to vote? I'll just want to interject here that the reason NISBA doesn't have a policy on this, this is essentially the sanctuary cities language. Not every city does have it, and it's designed to protect undocumented families.
Thank you for that clarification, Commissioner Powell, because the other thing, I just want to uplift that Abigail Hernandez continues to sit in a detention center, and had this policy been followed, that perhaps not just one superintendent, but having also our general counsel give immediate, because that did not happen. What happened was one superintendent was contacted, and they contacted law enforcement, who then contacted ICE. And we are still fighting that case, and the community has not forgotten, the community has not given up, and there are a number of supporters that continue to reach out to Abby and try to keep her spirits lifted. But had this policy been followed with fidelity, we perhaps would not be in this situation. So I just wanted to point that out, that this is a really important, critical, and impactful policy that does impact families and our students. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Online voting is now open. Right, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Charisma. Item 4I on the agenda is just to restate what was said in the PowerPoint. The wellness policy, having passed through the committee, is going to be fast-tracked. The first reading will be June 14 at that's an ESA committee meeting?
It will be at the special meeting.
Special meeting. And then the 21st is
Finance,
the Finance Committee, and then the 23rd is
our business
the
board
regular
meeting,
business
our board
meeting.
business meeting.
So, especially for the Finance Committee Chair, thank you for allowing us to tag along onto your agenda to make that happen. It requires the Chair's support to make that happen. Item 4J, policy updates. There are two policies that were discussed in subcommittee that I felt it was important to get input from you, my fellow commissioners, rather than make assumptions about how this board would react to them. The first is recruiters in schools. Now, this policy language exists as it does because in the historical wake of the Boy Scouts case at the Supreme Court and rulings that that schools were required to provide contact information for all students who were within reach of graduation, we included opt-in, opt-out language that was very specific to this community. And one of the reasons we did that wasn't in response to the pressure from anti-war communities, but rather in response to the fact that at that time the military was a discriminating employer under the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the fact that non-binary soldiers could be put out of the military, so they were discriminating employers. That isn't the case anymore. That isn't to say there aren't other recruiters, like employers, who might choose to recruit in our schools, maybe Hobby Lobby or some other employer that holds similar ideas. So I wanted to bring, with that historic background, I wanted to hear from you, my colleagues, as to whether we need to retain this policy or whether, because the military has ceased to be a discriminating employer, whether we need this policy anymore or should rescind it. So I'm open to any feedback at this time, and that'll dictate whether we pursue it further. If you're not comfortable speaking at this point or haven't thought it through enough, let me just invite you to email me. I do need some kind of guidance, whether to leave it on the books and just push it and then advance it in a future policy meeting, or advance the rescission of in a future policy meeting. Commissioner LeBrun?
Yeah, I guess I would just be curious what removing the policy or potential impact it has and what it would open us up to in terms of allowing access or information to be shared. Is there any information on that?
The current policy, as I say, recruiters in schools, we have to provide the information that the recruiters ask for, unless the parents have opted out of sharing their mailing address and phone numbers. But one of the aspects of this policy is if a recruiter comes to a building and sets up a table, there has to be a table made available for any community group that would oppose the military. So by keeping it, let me use the example I just did about, let's say, for example, we had a job fair and Hobby Lobby decided to set up a recruiting table, an employment recruiting table. In theory, members of the community, the Pride community, could set up their own table and say, over there, those guys are discriminating employees, and you shouldn't put in your application there. That's really that's what keeping the policy would do for us. What's the likelihood of that particular scenario? It's pretty small. So that's what we have to weigh as a governing body.
So, in that policy, like the recruiter comes into the school and sets up a table, how does those other community organizations know that they're doing that? Know to show up? Are we notifying them, or?
When the military was still a discriminating employee, our obligation was to communicate to the community, and we had contacts. We knew who it was that were opposing the military because they were here advocating a ban on recruiters in our schools. So we knew who those people were, and the legal department was supposed to reach out to them and communicate that there was an application for a recruitment table. Did it happen? I don't know.
So, Commissioner Powell, you have a history of involvement with this, a lot of history of involvement, different reasons. What is your recommendation?
As always, I see both sides. And you're right, my history goes back because I wore the uniform. There was a time, in fact, when the community said that I shouldn't be allowed to vote on it out of conflict of interest. But in fact, I wasn't in the recruiting business. I didn't have a financial conflict of interest. And I asked our ethics committee to weigh in on that. And they agreed that I had every right to vote on that policy as well because I wasn't conflicted. I guess because I came up with this hypothetical example of the Hobby Lobby, I would keep the policy in place just because there is a possibility that discriminating employers could try to access our schools. And we want to be consistent. We want to uphold our values that all of our students, whether they're binary or non-binary, deserve an opportunity at a wholesome working environment. So since you're asking, I guess I would hold this up and push the policy through renewal as written.
Okay, and that's it for me. That was,
okay.
I support that.
Okay, I saw a couple other head nods. I see Reverend Sparr's video is on. Would you like to weigh in at all as a parent rep?
Yeah, I would agree with keeping this policy because we saw in the last administration that politics can certainly change how the military acts and how they recruit and whether or not they're a discriminatory agency. And I think that rather than be reactive to a change in policy from the federal government, that if we, believe that we want our schools to be a safe place free of discrimination for all of our students, regardless of their gender identification, then we should continue to maintain this policy for their safety and well-being.
Okay. right,
Thank
so, thank you very much for chiming in. You said it so very well. I know I didn't hear from a majority of my colleagues. I hope that you will communicate to me by email. But based on the feedback I did get, we'll work through the subcommittee and bring it back to policy committee next month. Okay? Unless there's overwhelming silent opposition that hasn't been articulated at this point. The other policy we have, recognition for accomplishment. This is a very short policy. There are a couple of mostly formatting, capital letters, et cetera, changes to this, but the real question is, do we need a policy on recognition for accomplishment? It's something we do, and something we will probably continue to do with or without a policy. So my only question to you is, do we need to keep this in writing? Does it send a particular message, positive message, that we have such a policy and therefore should continue it? Or is it just taking up space on the internet?
I'd like to comment.
Please.
Yep. I don't really see a reason for a policy in this area. I mean, it's a give me that we're going to recognize individuals for their accomplishments, so I don't really see a need for a policy for that, personally speaking.
Does anybody else share that? Go ahead, Commissioner LeBron.
I mean, that was my first thought initially, but then in my mind I was thinking, well, what if we got a superintendent that was like against it, and then we can't turn to a policy and say, not that you're against it, but I think a policy is like long-term beyond the current, even board, right?
Sure.
And so that's the only reason I would like, I don't think it hurts us to keep it on the books. I think it has some potential to maybe, depending on a superintendent coming in, not wanting to do it. But I think it's something we're going to do anyway, regardless. So I don't know if it necessarily needs to be in a policy, but because it's already there, I would be okay with keeping it still there for future safeguarding.
Right. My first thought when presented with the choices, kind of groan, like, I'm going to ask my colleagues to rescind this. It just sort of sent a bad vibe. But any other feedback? Can folks send me a quick line of email? So far I've sort of kind of heard both sides, which is kind of the position I was already in. So I don't even want to promise that I'll take it back to subcommittee and bring it back next month. I just really kind of need some clarity from you, my colleagues, okay? All right, that takes us to unfinished business. We have superintendent's goals. For some reason, this Charisma's going to remind us how this went. We already did pass this year, but there was a little bit of sloppy editing, and so we're bringing it back to you again. It's mostly a technical change, but we want to bring it to you again. Is this an action item, Charisma? Yes, it is. I would entertain at this time a motion to advance policy 3000 once again.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Malloy, a second from Commissioner Patterson. Discussion. The sloppiness was that it referred to two different exhibits instead of one. Okay? All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
We're just going to wait for online voting.
Online voting is now open. Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. very good. That takes us to 5C, which is the long-range financial planning policy. This is listed as an action item, but I intended to have some discussions with our acting CFO now that the budget is done. I haven't received any feedback from anybody despite numerous requests. I'm not sure why there's track changes because this is all new, except that I did delete the historic context. Oh, I see, we do have some input. We do have the addition from administration, we have the addition of, in scope of numbers 4 and 5. Okay, so we do have some feedback from the administration, and I thank you so much for that. I don't know if my colleagues have had a chance to look at this. But since we do have feedback from the administration, I'm ready to move it forward, if I can have a motion to do so.
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
and second from Commissioner Adams. Discussion? Keep in mind that this is a policy that was called for in the financial plan that Dr. Jallo presented and that the board approved. Okay? Any further discussion? In that case, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, just waiting on electronic voting.
Online voting is now open.
Thank you, Charisma. Almost done, folks. I know this is dry as all get out, isn't it? Okay. I finished, but we didn't get the count yet.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, 5E, policy updates. We did just vote on a bylaws change, but it did not have language in it that our Auditor General had promoted. I only just put this draft together today, and so I expect no one has seen it. It's only on the agenda right now as an FYI to call your attention to the fact that I did accomplish the goal I set for myself, which was to get this in front of you, but we will discuss it next month. Okay? And that takes us to the board survey. If we take a minute out, and then I'll call for an adjournment. Are we, Charisma, are we going back into executive session to finish the suspension appeals?
Yes. And if you want, once you end your meeting, if Vice President LeBron wants to call it, or you, up to you. I said if she wanted to, because the executive session is at the end of her meeting. Once she adjourns it, I don't know if she wants to call it, or if you wanted to call.
Oh, it doesn't matter, but we do have to go into executive, finish
Yes.
the records, and then come back and
out.
vote. Yeah.
Yes, because that's going to be on our special meeting agenda.
She can call. Do you want to read the executive session, Commissioner Powell?
Oh, the rules. No, I'm going to turn the floor over to you at that point.
All
Okay.
right, Adrian, you can give us the language because it has to do with student records and matters. So.
Right. It's really a closed session for the purposes of discussing student discipline.
Okay.
Student discipline appeals, I should say.
Okay. I just need one more second.
Just let me know when you're ready, Commissioner Powell.
Okay. Are all the surveys submitted? If they are, I'll call for a motion to adjourn the policy committee.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Do we do do it, does that come up as electronic as well, Charisma, or are we just,
I can take it if, since it's everyone agreed. We're good.
all right. Well, that concludes my role in tonight's meeting, and I'll turn the floor over to Vice President LeBron, who was running the closed session before we started this.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session.
One second.
Okay.
Can you, you should convene the meeting first and then.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to convene the meeting for the special meeting. The time is 6:50 p.m. on June 7th, 2022. And then can I get a motion to go into closed session to discuss student records and
Student disciplinary appeals.
do student disciplinary appeals?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
So that was motion by Commissioner Malloy, seconded by Commissioner Adams. All those in favor?
Aye.
And for the public, we'll be right back. We have one more record, and then we'll come back out and vote, and that'll conclude the meeting. Thank you. Thank you and welcome back. We are out of executive session and now I just need a motion. I have
So
to
moved.
re-sign into board docs, I'm sorry.
Second.
I need I just need the resolution number and I apologize because board docs signed me out.
Is resolution number 657.
So can I get a motion for?
So moved.
Second.
I'm going to give it to Commissioner Malloy and seconded by Commissioner Adams for the first round, so thank you both. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And are we doing online voting?
I can do it.
I'm
Okay.
not logged in. Okay.
So that passes, and this concludes the special meeting for today for consideration of student disciplinary matters. The time is 7:11 p.m. I have the motion to convene. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.